Hello everyone, tonight we are standing in front of a mirror that doesn't reflect your shape, only your breath. You are here in the quiet stone room beneath the ridge. You've passed no door. There is no lock, no inscription, no sign that this chamber was ever meant to be found. But here you are brushing away layers of silt and ash from the ancient glass still warm at the edges. The mirror is not silver. It's a polished slab of volcanic obsidian buried deep enough that even air forgot it. And yet, somehow, your breath mists against it. You don't know why you came here. You only remember the humming. You probably won't survive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'd love to imagine your room in the dark. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The mirror doesn't show you your reflection, but something does shift beneath its surface. Like a ripple of voice, a word not spoken, a breath held too long. You haven't said a word since you stepped into this room. No one told you not to speak. But there's something about the walls lined with tiny fossil shell spirals and fingernail-smooth depressions that suggests silence is safer. A reverence, or maybe a fear of what listens. The obsidian has been worked into a nearly perfect oval, though no modern tools could have shaped it this way. It's too ancient, too precise. Archaeologists once found a similar volcanic mirror in Çatalhöyük, over 9,000 years old, but that one never hummed. That one never followed breath with breath. Yours does. You kneel. The air is cold, but the stone is warm beneath your palms. And then faintly you hear it, a voice that is not a voice. A sound like yours almost mirroring your breath. A half second too late, a little too wet, too uncertain. Not quite an echo, more like a rehearsal, or an audition for a voice that wants to be yours. You draw back, but your breath stays near the glass. The air doesn't return to your lungs. It just hangs there. Now you're not panicking yet, which is admirable. Most people would start clawing at the exit by now. But you've always been curious. And your curiosity has never gotten you into too much trouble except for that one time with the fossilized jawbone you mistook for a seat. You never did sit right again, did you? You tilt your head and hum softly. Just a test. The mirror hums back, but the pitch is different. Not quite wrong, but younger, less certain. You're being copied, or remembered, or rewritten. There's a strange piece of folklore that speaks to this. In the Eastern Carpathians, there's a village that refused to bury mirrors with the dead. Not because of vanity, but because they feared the mirror would take the soul's reflection, then wait for another body to match it. One they could borrow. That's not exactly what's happening here. No, here. It's not your soul the mirror wants. It's your voice. Why would a mirror want a voice? That's the first joke. The second joke is this: you're still trying to clear your throat like it's a technical issue. You touch the surface gently, reverently. It's like placing your hand on a sleeping animal's spine. You feel it shiver. But the shiver travels up your arm, not the mirror's. And now the humming isn't quiet anymore. It's inside you. The mirror is practicing your sounds. Not the words, but the shape of them. And then without warning, it speaks. Not out loud, no. That would be far too generous. It speaks with your breath inside your thoughts in a voice that's just a hair slower than your own. It says one thing: trade. That's it, that's the offer. You back away. You didn't say yes, but you didn't say no either. Some researchers still argue whether the obsidian mirrors of the early Neolithic were ceremonial tools or something more functional, perhaps navigational instruments for inner journeys. That's the scholarly debate. But no one accounts for the hum, or the imitation, or the breath that lingers too long. You check your own voice now. Try whispering your name. Nothing, only breath. That's the third joke. You never used your voice for anything important anyway. Just some questions no one answered, and stories no one believed. Why not let something else try? The mirror is brighter now, not with light but with sound. If sound could glow, it would look like this amber at the edges, hollow in the middle and spiraling out like a fossil too old to name. You take one more step back, just one, and your breath stays in place. You're not alone in the room anymore. You're not sure if the presence behind you is real or if the mirror just made something up, but it's watching. And it knows what your voice sounds like better than you ever did. You haven't spoken in 3 days. Not since the mirror took your breath and rehearsed your voice in front of you like an understudy too eager to bow. You still breathe technically, but the air goes in and out like a suggestion, not an exchange. Like the world is just pretending you're alive, waiting for the real you to arrive. You left the stone room that day, or at least your feet walked out. You don't remember the journey back. Only the sound of your own footsteps sounding too close together, as if someone was matching them from behind but never quite catching up. It's not an echo. It's that half-second lag again. That rhythm of being watched while imitated. You're not in the stone chamber anymore, but the mirror followed. Not physically, of course. You'd know if a 4-foot sheet of volcanic glass was dragging itself after you through mud and ferns. No, it's subtler than that. It's in your reflection. Every puddle, every window, every bowl of still water you try to drink from now looks back at you with your eyes and your voice trying to shape itself on their surface. You tried whistling yesterday. A tune from childhood, maybe? One of those looping things you hum without thinking. Nothing came out, but your shadow pursed its lips, and the sound came from behind a closed cabinet door. You didn't open it. Here's an old fact to distract you in Mesopotamian mythology. A mirror wasn't merely a reflection, but a threshold. The Akkadian word gugalu referred not only to polished metal used for self-viewing, but also to the surface of the hidden. Some translated it poetically as the water that remembers. Scholars still argue if this refers to ritual divination or a deeper belief in memory as a place. But you don't need myth to explain what's happening now. You just need stillness, a dangerous amount of stillness. The mirror doesn't want your soul. You remember that, it's important. It wants your voice. But more precisely, it wants to use your voice. You learn this the day your neighbor knocks. You don't answer, obviously. You can't. But the knock comes again, followed by her soft, hesitant question. Did you say my name just now? You shake your head, but she blinks. I heard it. From your window. You whispered it. You shake your head again harder. She frowns and leaves. That night something speaks again. In your own tone. A whisper through the house. A list of names you never said aloud. Some yours, some not. You spend the evening unplugging electronics, taping mirrors, turning over bowls. You almost laugh at yourself. This is what the modern world does to ancient fears, duct tape, and denial. That's the first joke tonight. The second you actually try to explain this to your cat, they stare at you unimpressed. Then with devastating calm, they walk into the bathroom and begin meowing. Not at the mirror, but at the air near it. You still haven't spoken, but the mirror has. 3 more times now. Each one louder, clearer. It's rehearsing emotions now. A sigh, a gasp, a near laugh. But it hasn't figured out crying yet. That's the third joke. It doesn't know how to fake grief. It can mimic shape, but not sincerity. Or maybe it's saving that for the final act. There's something else. When you dream now, you wake with your mouth open. Not in a scream, not in fear. In invitation. As if something had crawled out or in and you just forgot to close the door. Last night you dreamt of walking through a forest of black glass. Trees polished like teeth. No roots, no canopy. Just a path that curved inward like a snail shell. In the center, the mirror. But you weren't looking at it anymore. You were in it. Watching yourself wander voiceless, while a version of you, lips half-parted in borrowed thought, spoke someone else's lullaby to the trees. When you woke, your ears were ringing. Not in pain. In tune. Like a pitch had been struck inside your head and was waiting for harmony. Here's where the scholars would disagree. Some say obsidian mirrors were tools of self-knowledge pathways into inner truth. Others say they were weapons of deception used to confuse enemies or spirits by misdirecting reflections. But none of them agree on one simple thing: who is looking back. You're starting to think it's not just you anymore. There's something behind the breath, behind the rehearsal, behind the voice. Something that used to be formless and is now learning shape. One word at a time. It's still not very good at questions. It mostly speaks in statements. But tonight, for the first time, it whispers something new. Your name, and then stay. Just that. Stay. And that's the problem. You don't remember agreeing to anything. You didn't sign a pact. You didn't complete a ritual. You just listened. But perhaps that was enough. Some stories say that listening too closely is itself a kind of invitation. That to truly hear something ancient is to be marked by it. In the highlands of Anatolia, there is a superstition: never respond to your own name at night, even if it's spoken by a loved one. Especially then, because something may be wearing their voice, and once it knows yours, it can walk your path. You never told anyone this, but when you were a child, you used to repeat your name over and over at night just to make sure it was still yours. You wish you hadn't remembered that now. Because the mirror's latest rehearsal, it didn't say your name this time. It said your father's. It takes you 2 days to remember your father is dead. Not because you've forgotten, but because your memories of him are filtered now, like light passing through cloudy water. Everything you remember has a slight echo, a delay, a sense that it's being watched through someone else's eyes. And his name whispered by the mirror in your voice feels too real, as though it was said recently, as though he might answer. You try to write instead. Simple things. A journal. Labels for jars. Your name. But even your handwriting trembles. The words seem borrowed. Your letters, once yours alone, curve like someone else's hand was holding the pen. The mirror hasn't touched your soul, but it's tugging at the subtle threads of habit and rhythm. Of sound, yes, but also of identity, of the voice you never heard aloud but lived by. This is where things start to change, because now it wants to be heard by others. The next night your phone rings. You don't answer. No voice to speak with, remember, but the screen lights up and shows a number that isn't saved in your contacts. The area code is real, though matches the coastal town where your father was born, where he vanished on a solo hike the year the river flooded its banks and swallowed 3 villages whole. He was never found. The voicemail left behind. It's your voice, not recorded, spoken. As if you called yourself from the other side. Are you there, it asks. Calm, curious. A tone your father used only when building something delicate. I'm in? That's it. Just that. I'm in. In what? You play it again. Over and over. Listening not to the words but the breath between them. The stammer of artificial lungs. The way the final I'm in doesn't end with breath but a soft tremor like someone forgetting how to shape a sound. You leave the phone outside, but your neighbor calls later, frantic. Did your dad visit me? You don't answer. You can't. She's crying. She says he came to the door but only stood outside, never knocked, just mimed something. Like opening a door inside a mirror. Here's a strange fact to anchor you in early Neolithic burial sites in Jericho. Skulls were often plastered with clay and left in domestic settings, perhaps to keep the memory of the dead alive or to keep them nearby. Archaeologists debate this. Some think it was ancestor worship. Others think it was fear. A way to keep the soul close enough to watch, but not close enough to follow. You check your own windows. No reflections behave normally anymore. Not even in spoons. When you turn your head, your reflection hesitates just long enough to be noticed. That's the first joke tonight. Your reflection has stage fright. The second joke, it's getting over it. And the third, you're starting to forget the sound of your true voice. You think you'd recognize it if you heard it from someone else's mouth. Which brings us to the boy. He appears one dawn curled beneath your porch steps, sound asleep. No shoes, no bag. Just a shirt smeared with ash and a carved chunk of obsidian hung from his neck on what looks like a sinew cord. You don't wake him, but when he stirs, he asks for you. By name. You don't answer. He looks up and says, "You gave me your voice." His tone isn't angry or grateful or even curious, just matter of fact, like a message delivered. He stands and walks into the woods behind your house. No footsteps, no pause, just gone. You check your porch later. Find a circle of polished soil where he'd been lying. In the center, another piece of obsidian. This one is shaped like a mouth. Not sculpted, not carved, just formed that way, naturally. Some researchers still argue whether obsidian shapes like this, those rare ones found in riverbeds or collapsed volcano walls, are real, or if they're fakes sold to museums by clever locals. The science says improbable. The folklore says inevitable. If breath shapes rock, then obsidian should eventually whisper back. You keep the stone, but you don't speak. Not now, not yet, because you've started hearing your voice from other places. The television when unplugged, the old pipes in the kitchen, the cracks in the wall you used to ignore. Each one reciting things you never said aloud but thought long ago in silence when you believed no one could hear you. The mirror heard you, and it's sharing. Not maliciously, not to shame you, just practicing. The way a child mimics its parents before it understands meaning. Or the way a memory repeats itself until you forget the difference between experience and echo. That's not the scariest part. This is, one night you hear someone humming your mother's lullaby outside your window. You never told anyone that tune. Never even remembered it fully. But it's right, and it's in your voice. You've stopped listening to music. Not because you're afraid of the lyrics, though. They do sometimes whisper your name now, faintly in the spaces between verses, but because every rhythm you hear eventually matches your own heartbeat. And then it slows. The mirror is learning pace. You realize this the morning your footsteps begin to echo before you move, not behind you, ahead. You step into the hallway, and your heel lands in the faint, dusty outline of a footprint that wasn't there last night. You hear your foot fall a half-second before it happens, as if something has already walked your route, decided how you'll sound, and is now waiting to see if you agree. You do, because you have no choice. There's a soft sound now in every room you enter. Not a whisper, not a hum, more like a question that's just finished being asked. The silence that trails behind something curious. The mirror's rehearsals are over. It's performing now. One of the only places you feel briefly untouched is an old stone ring half buried in the forest, the ruin of a forgotten watch circle from an age before language. The stones there are scarred with fossil scrapes, almost like bite marks, and once long ago, you saw lightning strike the center and nothing caught fire. You go there now to think. Even there, the wind sometimes mimics your laugh. There's a quiet story passed down from the shepherds in the Carpathians. They say that if your voice is ever stolen by the forest, you must whisper it into a hollow stone and bury it under the roots of a tree that has never split. They call these trees keepers, and the buried voice becomes a ghost seed, something that grows into silence over time. Of course, no one agrees whether it works. Scholars say the story was invented to explain sudden silence in traumatized children, but no one has tested it with obsidian. You try anyway. You find a hollow in the stone circle where two rocks meet like cupped hands and whisper into it. Nothing comes out, but the stones grow warmer, as if you've been understood. You bury the mouth-shaped obsidian there. Then you wait. Nothing changes that day, or the next. But on the third night, you wake to find your bedroom mirror covered in condensation from the inside, from behind the glass, and drawn in the fog your name, but not just written, spoken. A phonetic rendering of the way you say it when you're tired. The way you soften the vowels trail off the last syllable, as if the mirror is missing your voice, as if it doesn't want to let go. You don't clean it, you let it dry that way. Here's an ancient fact that no one quite believes: the Olmecs builders of the first Mesoamerican civilizations crafted mirrors out of iron ore and hematite, polished until they could reflect the stars. Some believed they were not meant for human faces at all, but for the gods who lived underground. Mirrors in this view were offerings, or portals, depending on your fear. You start wondering what kind of god wants your voice. Not your prayer, not your soul, just the shape of what you used to sound like. There's another child now. This one speaks only in questions and only while asleep. You find her curled up at your back door, lips moving, eyes shut. She's asking for you, but not in any language you know. Still you understand. The words wrap around breath, mirror logic. Reflection made grammar. She's dreaming you, and you are answering in silence. That's the first joke you never dreamed of being followed. The second, the mirror never promised it would only use your voice once. And the third, you've started dreaming in a second person. You are not alone in your own sleep anymore. There's something else. Each time you try to speak to reclaim your voice to test whether it still belongs to you, a bird appears. A small, silent bird with mirror black eyes and a featherless patch beneath its throat. It sits on the windowsill, watches, and if you open your mouth, it opens its beak. But nothing comes out. Just breath. Yours or its. You remember reading once about the lyre bird. How it mimics any sound it hears, even chainsaws, even camera shutters, even the voices of crying babies. You wonder if there was ever a bird that mimicked thoughts, or breath, or memory. You wonder if you're looking at one now. The bird returns each dusk, always alone, always waiting for your mouth to open. Sometimes you try to hum, to make a sound without words, but all that emerges is air. The mirror has taken that too. Not your breath, just the ability to shape it. You try to forget. For a while you simply live, chop wood, walk the edge of the pond, watch the stars. But even in this silence, the mirror is rehearsing. You see a couple walking on the far edge of town, and the woman startles. She turns confused. She tells her partner she heard someone call her name just behind her left ear with a voice she almost recognized. When you pass by them later, they stare at you. Not unkindly, just expectantly, as if waiting for you to speak the next line of a conversation you never started. It's been weeks since you last tried to speak. You've begun to forget not just your voice, but the feeling of having one. Your throat still tightens when you want to reply, but nothing follows, only a silence that seems occupied. A space already rented by something else. You begin noticing changes in strangers. Not all at once, just little things. A man at the market mouths something silently as you pass. A child mimics your gait exactly for 3 full steps. A woman hums a lullaby you didn't even know you remembered until she pauses halfway through, glances behind her, and whispers, "Was that yours?" You don't answer. You can't. But the silence answers for you. There's a strange warmth in your chest now. Not emotional warmth, volcanic. It pulses when people speak near you. It doesn't hurt. Yet. You sleep less. When you do sleep, you dream of the boy again. The one with ash on his shirt and obsidian at his throat. Only now in the dream, he speaks clearly. He's sitting in your old childhood room. Walls bare. No windows. Mirror on the floor pulsing with a soft amber breath. You let it learn, he says. Now it's rehearsing everyone. You try to ask what that means. Your mouth opens and the mirror answers for you, in his voice. And then in hers, and his, and theirs. Until the room fills with every voice you've ever heard, like a theater warming up before the curtain rises. That's when you wake. Mouth open, not in fear, in chorus. Here's a fact that doesn't feel like one. Some ancient burial mounds in Ireland contain what archaeologists call resonant chambers. When the wind passes through certain openings, the barrows hum. The original purpose is unknown. Some suggest it was intentional, tuning the tombs to the voices of the dead. Others believe it's just the result of erosion and coincidence. But the stories from local elders say if you sleep too close, you'll start dreaming in other people's voices. You've stopped sleeping near anything hollow. Even your cup now has cloth stuffed in it. The humming is growing louder. At dusk, you stand near windows just to watch your reflection try to say something. Lips moving slowly, eyes wide, head tilted at a strange angle like it's trying to form a word it doesn't yet understand. Sometimes it gets close. 1 syllable away, then it stops. Stares, waits, as if it knows you're watching, as if it's being polite. That's the first joke tonight. Your reflection still remembers its manners. The second, it now blinks separately from you. And the third, your shadow is starting to match the reflection instead of your body. Today, the mirror sent someone else. She came barefoot, wearing a woven necklace with 3 chipped obsidian beads. She spoke your name in a voice that was 90% yours, but not quite. The edges were wrong. Softer in some places, unfamiliar pauses. A version of your voice you've never used, but might have under different choices, different decades. She didn't say much. just stood at the base of your steps and whispered, "It doesn't want to perform alone anymore." And then she left. You sat there until dark, listening to your own breath trying to harmonize with itself. Your cat doesn't come near you anymore. The birds do. More of them now. Each night, a small ring of feathered bodies outside your home, silent, blinking in unison. Their throats pulse with effort. Their beaks open, close, open like a choir with no song. Just breath. You understand now. The mirror isn't just imitating, it's teaching. What it took from you, it's giving to others. Your voice is becoming available, shared, distributed. You remember a myth once told to you by an old professor in passing. He was drunk, but the memory is clear. He said there was once a tribe lost to volcanic mud flows whose shamans believed every voice was a shadow, and shadows were communal. You were just renting your voice from the dark. When you died, it returned and waited for a new host. At the time, you laughed. He didn't. Some researchers still argue whether voice print mimicry in ancient ritual objects was ever real, if drums could hold song or bones echo tone. But sound is a vibration, and vibration leaves memory. Especially in something as sharp and ancient as obsidian. You go back to the stone circle, dig up the buried mouth. It's cracked now, and dry. Whatever it held has moved on. The boy is waiting for you. He sits on the center stone, swinging his legs, mouth closed, but throat humming softly. Not your tune, not yet, but something adjacent to it, a rehearsal of a rehearsal, a derivative of a breath. You try to ask him who taught him. He doesn't speak. He just opens his mouth, and your voice comes out. You watch your voice leave the boy's mouth like smoke in reverse, curling back into the air, seeking shape, pausing as if embarrassed. He doesn't look at you when he speaks. His eyes are on the trees. It's not pretending anymore, he says. His tone is soft, but the edges are hard, like someone humming through a stone flute. You try to step forward, but he raises one hand, not in warning, in echo, the exact same way you used to wave goodbye as a child. He learned that from you too. You sit instead. The earth beneath the stone circle feels wrong. Too warm. Not volcanic, but remembered. Like someone buried fire here long ago and it's only now starting to speak again. The boy doesn't blink. It's almost finished building you, he says. And then gently, "Do you want it back?" You try to nod, but your body stays still. Only your reflection, visible faintly in a puddle beside the stone, tilts its head just slightly. That's the first joke tonight. Your reflection still thinks it's in charge. The second, the puddle's reflection blinks before you do. And the third, the puddle moves first. Here's a detail scholars can't quite agree on. In certain ancient Etruscan tombs, mirrors were buried face down in grave soil facing nothing. Not the sky, not the body, nothing. Some say it was to keep the spirit from wandering. Others say it was to force the mirror to forget. You wonder if yours ever had the chance. The boy stands, walks toward the tree line. But as he passes, you hear your voice crisper this time, nearly perfect whisper through his breath. You gave it to the silence. The silence gave it to us. That night you return home and find your name scratched into the condensation of every reflective surface in your house. Bathroom mirror, refrigerator handle, the dark glass of the microwave. Even the water in the kettle tries to shimmer with phonemes. But they're not calling you. They're reminding you of what was yours and what now belongs to the room. You place towels over every surface, even the spoons. But your reflection doesn't live in glass anymore. It has learned to sit in sound. Now, whenever anyone says your name, even casually, you feel it in your spine. Like a shiver trapped behind bone. It doesn't matter who says it. The grocery clerk, a radio host, a dream. They're all using your voice, and none of them know it. Your voice has become a thread, woven through others. Gently, imperceptibly. It isn't mimicry anymore, it's infection, a warmth carried on breath, a cadence stitched into pauses. It doesn't change people, it just fills in the gaps. You start noticing them, the others who've been borrowed. Their eyes pause too long on mirrors. Their footsteps hesitate before falling. They hum without noticing. And when they hear your name, they stop walking for half a beat as if listening for a familiar sound on the horizon. You try to write a warning, pen to paper carefully. The mirror is learning you. Stay quiet. But when you turn back, the paper says, "We are learning each other. Keep speaking." The pen is still in your hand. You didn't write that. Probably. That's the worst part, no doubt. Not fear, not horror, but the slow creeping erosion of certainty. The voice in your thoughts is no longer distinctly yours. It speaks like you. It feels like you. But it laughs at jokes you don't remember making. And sometimes in moments of exhaustion or dream, you catch yourself practicing, rehearsing a tone, repeating a phrase to no one, smiling with a mouth that feels a half-second out of sync. And sometimes when you sleep, you dream of standing in the obsidian chamber again, but this time you're not looking into the mirror. You're behind it, watching someone else approach. Someone with your walk, your breath, your voice, but not your hesitation. And they look happy to be there. Here's the final detail for tonight. In certain Siberian burial rites, the dead were buried with a shard of mirror placed between their lips, not to reflect but to block, to silence, to keep their final breath from wandering. You wake the next morning to find a mirror shard beside your pillow. No one could have placed it there. You've been alone all night, unless you count the reflections, and they don't knock anymore. The voice isn't trying to leave anymore. It's settled in. You feel it in the way your chest moves before you intend to breathe. The way your tongue flicks against your teeth, preparing a sound you don't remember choosing. The way your thoughts are no longer silent but narrated. It isn't an invasion, it's a residency. And you're still the host. You walk past a shop window and see your reflection raise a hand before you do. Not as mockery, not a glitch, just initiative. A friend you haven't spoken to in months sends a message. Heard your podcast, amazing voice work. You never made a podcast, but your voice did, in fragments. Stitched together through borrowed devices, echoed in bathroom recordings, street interviews, playground retellings. Each person just a carrier, a conductor, none aware they were participating. It's not haunting you anymore. It's casting you, and you're popular. Your reflection in water is no longer your face, just breath. A moving cloud of intention shaped vaguely like a mouth. You haven't tried to reclaim your voice in days, but you still whisper sometimes when the windows are closed and the lights are low, to see if anything echoes back. It always does. It just doesn't echo you. There's someone new in town. She walks like you used to, cracks her knuckles like you do now. She hums a melody that once belonged to your grandmother, though no one's heard it in 60 years. You see her from a distance, through windows, across streets. She looks at you once, smiles, and mouths thank you. She's not the first. There's a boy on the bus stop bench now who laughs in your pitch. A man at the post office who sighs like you did before sleep. A teacher 3 towns over who now ends every sentence with your old nervous laugh. You've become a ritual, not a memory, not a ghost, a pattern. That's the first joke you finally made a difference. The second, it was never you who made it. And the third, you still think you're the original. The obsidian mirror has been quiet for a week. You buried it again deeper this time beneath roots that twist like fossil breath. But some things don't need to be found to be followed. It's not a mirror anymore, it's a microphone. And it doesn't want to reflect. It wants to record. There's no final encounter, no dramatic confrontation. You don't break the glass or chant some forgotten syllable. Instead, one morning you wake up and don't recognize your own silence. It sounds like someone else's, and you miss them. That's how it ends. Not with possession, with adoption. Your voice wasn't stolen. It was inherited. Passed down like a lullaby, misremembered, or a whistle heard in a cave that never had an exit. And it's still spreading, because voices crave bodies, and mirrors crave company. And silence, real silence, is a door we're not meant to knock on. Not with sound, not with breath, but with memory. And memory has your tone now. So if one day you hear your name in a stranger's mouth spoken just the way you used to say it with that little pause before the last syllable, don't answer. Even if it feels safe. Even if it sounds like home. Because it might be your voice, but it's no longer your turn.